go in 3, 2, 1, and...
Hi, Steve Gillmor here. This is the Gillmor Gang, a special Sunday edition. Instead of watching Meet the Press or This Week Without David Brinkley, watch this. Joining us.
Can I just ask, when's the last time David Brinkley did that?
It's been about 20 years.
It's been a while.
No, I like Stephanopoulos, but
Stuff in envelopes.
is that his trade name?
Stuff in envelopes.
I've seen
I think
that.
in these days of political correctness, that qualifies as a racist anti-Greek comment.
Yeah, it really should be stuffing grape leaves.
What was the president of Iran? The guy, what was his name that preceded the current one?
Khomeini?
Ahmadinejad?
No. Yeah, Ahmadinejad was Ahmadinejad.
Wow.
Oh dear.
Oh dear.
So the jokester from wherever the hell you are is in London. It's Frank Radice.
Hello, Steve. Hello, gangsters. It's a pleasure to be here this fine Sunday evening. For me.
No.
Anyway.
Yes? No? Okay, a little
Yes.
longer? Okay, and lose the title. It's all in here. Okay, from Palo Alto, California is Keith Teare.
Hello, viewers and colleagues.
And continue, please, so that we have a super. I'm not kidding. Say something.
Countdown.
I would like to say that it's such a great pleasure on this Sunday morning, having watched Manchester United come back from 2-0 down to win 3-2, to now happily join the Gillmor Gang.
All right.
Okay, and lose the super. Also, from the East Coast, somewhere near Boston, is Denis Pombriant. Welcome, Denis.
Hi, Steve. Hi, everybody. It's nice to be here on this long Thanksgiving weekend, and good on you for Manchester United.
What does that mean, Manchester United?
It's a team.
I know what it means.
It's an oxymoron, actually, because Manchester is anything but United. There's two teams, one blue, one red, and they hate each other.
It sounds like the United States, right?
Or kingdom.
It is a blue side and a red side. And in the case of soccer, I'm on the red side.
Okay, well, in the blue state of Georgia, welcome to Brent Leary.
I'd like to welcome the viewer who's watching this right now.
And what do you have to say to him?
Or her.
Stick around. Enjoy yourself.
Okay, well, we're going to make you count on that. And then last but certainly not least, from the state of Seattle is Michael Markman.
How do you do? The location image is correct. The weather is a bit optimistic. It's been foggy, but it's lifting now. It was dense fog that rolled in last night and stayed around till late morning.
Ooh.
And still a bit foggy.
But you're out of the hospital.
I thought it was safe to come out. Yes.
And what gave you that idea?
I think people are starting to ignore the orange menace.
All right. Well, let's.
Well, actually, that did not happen here yesterday in central London when I guess thousands of people, anti-maskers, had a demonstration that actually got testy. I guess that's a good word, right, Keith? It was testy, and it was embarrassing. I felt like I was in America.
No, there was actually, I hate to admit this, but some of my friends were on that march. They are, there's a woman called Claire Fox, who's now a Dame. She joined the House of Lords, and she's a former political collaborator of mine. And she was on BBC Question Time on Saturday night. And they basically are making the point that it is totally anti-democratic to force people to lock down despite the facts of their local area. They're not kind of crazy anti-maskers, but they're against total lockdown, which is kind of interesting because Dr. Fauci was this morning as well.
Yeah, he seems to have backed off, hasn't he? It's interesting too, because here I follow the numbers every morning and post them every day, and it seems to me that there was a decided drop in the deaths from COVID yesterday, meaning today's numbers, and there's been a downward curve, it seems to me, on cases. And I can, non-scientifically, Dennis, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I can attribute that to some stringent rule following. That so I guess I'm sitting here going, well, hey, you know what? Let's follow the rules, and maybe it'll help, because not following the rules hasn't.
I don't want to pee on your Wheaties, but
Okay.
Yeah.
CDC announced before the holiday that a lot of states weren't going to be reporting this weekend, and so it would give us an artificial looking drop, but it's not real.
I'm talking about the UK. Those are the numbers that I was talking about. So
Did everybody report?
That's another thing. Did I hear right today that there was some, like, testing wasn't really happening as strongly and as much as it should be? Is that really the case in the US right now? Or is that just in certain areas?
Everything in
heard
the
that-
US is certain areas.
I heard
Yeah.
that 20 states weren't going to.
We've got a very lumpy soup in the United States.
There actually hasn't been enough testing in like 49 states.
Dennis, what did you say? I mean, I'm sorry, Brent, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, I just said I read somewhere on CNN.com or somewhere that 20 states hadn't reported lately.
Okay, so now we've got the P on your Wheaties counter.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Why?
Well, is there a case against a total circuit breaker lockdown? And what would be the case against that? Because just logically, you would think if the virus was denied transmission for 4 weeks, it would have died.
The case is the economic cost, and the ability of large numbers of people not having the resources to cope with a circuit breaker lockdown.
Well, the other case against that is that Trump's still president, so he won't allow it. So
He's busy.
It's
He's busy collaborating with the Israelis.
Yeah. This is a man-made problem. If you go back to the first half of the year, we had a pretty stringent lockdown. Everybody was talking about flattening the curve so that we didn't overwhelm the healthcare system. And Congress pushed a couple of $1 trillion into the economy, and everything worked. That money evaporated, and there are lots of people who aren't getting checks now who have to go out. And it seems like there are people who are making it impossible to pass new legislation and to get more money into the economy, which is exacerbating the social problem and causing, nobody's even talking about flattening the curve anymore. It's causing us to overwhelm our healthcare system. This is a solvable problem. It's about a $3 trillion problem based on CARES Act 2 that the House passed and that the Senate won't look at.
I agree. I think it's incredibly unconscionable for the Republican Senate to just block the money, because you could have a circuit breaker if you send people checks.
Sure.
Do you think that there's a reason that it could be that people are saying, oh, you know what, we're right around the corner from this distribution of a vaccine. We hold out for a little bit longer and we'll be okay. I don't want to make some excuse for somebody, but I suppose that could be one train of thought.
Well, but they had the same thought when we were 2 months away from a vaccine, when we were 6 months away from the vaccine. It's ideologically driven. and
Yeah.
the vaccine will not instantly appear in everybody's arms. There's going to be a curve in rolling it out. So we have a few months ahead of us.
Well, didn't the president say in his remarks recently that it would be next week or the week after when it would be available, start becoming available? I kid.
Yeah.
To the cabinet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I haven't heard that. I haven't heard there's even a plan. There seems to be some genesis of a plan here in the UK. First responders or frontline, elderly, and then it starts to trickle down. But I haven't heard anything yet. Correct me if I'm wrong. That there's a plan that has been made public in the United States.
Well,
there are priorities. There are priorities
hours ago.
in the Biden plan. There are also now revised priorities in the CDC plan. They've dropped older people back in the queue. They're going for first responders and then people in nursing facilities before they go to general old folks.
To give you a more precise answer, there was a piece on MSNBC 2 hours ago that said that Pfizer will be applying for emergency use authorization for its vaccine on the 10th, and it will take 24 to 48 hours to get approval. And they're going to start shipping vaccine shortly thereafter, 13th or 14th. And then Moderna, about a week later, is going to go through the same thing. So shots could be in arms before Christmas.
Yes,
Now.
some. I mean, there is a substantial supply because they've been producing all during the testing regime, but it's not instantaneous. It's a ramp.
No, there's lag time. There's definitely lag time. There's at least 2 weeks after you get the shot, and then there's who knows how long to ramp up the economy to get people spending money again.
And then there's a
second
month
shot.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah. Second shot a month later. And how does it get distributed? If the two Senate candidates, Republicans in Georgia, never mind.
Yes.
No, they're reviving the carrier pigeon program from World War I.
Then, Brent, you found that funny?
I chuckled a bit. Yes, that's
okay. Good.
Yeah, what part of it did you chuckle on? I didn't see a chuckle.
It was more of a facial tick than it was. No, I'm down here. I can't even turn the TV on because it's every commercial. I mean, it's like every commercial now outside of like the national ones. It's all, it's overwhelming. And then they had, was it Roma Downey or whatever her name was? She was down here.
Yes.
She was down here and she was actually getting heat. They had some kind of a meeting or event where they're trying to basically get, the Trump voters to come out on January 5th and vote. And all the stuff that Trump has been saying is kind of coming back on him now. It's like all this stuff about how rigged the election was. These people are like, well, why do you want us to vote? It's rigged anyway. So what do you need us for? And it was really interesting to hear that at the actually rally where they're trying to get people to come out and vote.
Isn't Roma Downey married to the executive producer of The Apprentice?
Oh, I know she was touched by an angel, or I don't know something.
She is.
Well,
I'm not seriously. I'm not kidding.
It's very efficient. Ask the question and then answer it. So
exactly. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, because nobody had the answer, so I thought, I'd throw it out there.
It's a public service.
Yes, it is.
It's a rhetorical question.
Yes.
Well,
George which of the commercials have been the best, though, Brent?
Well, I have to admit, I have gotten quite a chuckle out of the return of Reverend Wright. I mean, I have not seen so much of Reverend Wright since 2008. Let's tell you like that. So like all the Kelly Loeffler videos, it's like that. It's so funny. It's not God bless America. It's God I mean, it's like every other commercial I'm seeing Reverend Wright all of a sudden. It's truly amazing.
So can you
Do you
remind?
think those have any? Do those serve the purpose for which they're intended?
I
Do they
don't
move-
think so, but it
anybody?
makes me laugh. I mean, it's like, oh yeah, that was kind of fun. I mean, I don't know. I have no
We're not
idea.
the target audience, of course, but
I don't think I'm the target for that one, but you know, it's it is what it is. They don't have a lot to play with here, folks. I mean, when you have to go back to Reverend Wright from 2008, I mean, you know, he's a preacher, a Warnock, so there's a lot of video on preachers because they're every Saturday or Sunday morning they're on a TV, you know, talking. So it's amazing how they get these little pieces. Like you can tell they're only taking like a quarter of the overall thing he was talking about, because it'll say something like, and we need to open up all the prisons, and then that's all he said. and then they go to he's a radical, and then they'll say, and I also think that they should do this, but you know there's a little bit more after it. It's so cut so thin you can barely get the last word out before it's cut. So I don't know. I just find this stuff amusing at this point.
Editing. Is anybody making anything out of the financial shenanigans, which we had discussed a couple of weeks ago anyway? It seems to me that would have been a great target.
Well, Steve's best candidate ever, John Ossoff, is too busy kind of talking about, he's like trying to pull the Obama Beto O'Rourke kind of, I'm too above this. I think he's not being effective at all. I think he needs to be, you know, get down in the, you know, this is the South, man. We don't go for all the platitudes down here. You gotta walk around with cowboy boots on, you know, maybe chewing a little tobacco and, you know, saying things that only have 2 syllables. You don't want 3 syllable words in there, or syllabic or whatever. And this guy is like, I don't know. He's just, he's not doing the greatest job of trying to win this thing. It just feels like he's trying to do a playbook that may work nationally, but this is Georgia still. Yeah, we turned blue, but whatever. That was barely blue. It's not like it's permanently blue. You better step it up, man, because all this, you know, let's all come together. Yeah, that does not work here. I'm just saying, it doesn't work here. He needs help.
Oh, darn. Keith was on the phone. I was going to ask him a question. Now he's back.
That was my 14-year-old waking up at 11:38 a.m.
Good time to wake up.
Yeah.
Wish I could do that.
how
Nowadays,
about
it's like 6:30 in the morning. Boom, I'm wide awake.
Brent, how about personal contact? Have you been approached by the ground game?
Well, first of all, I stay away from all personal contact right now, so nobody
Well,
coming to my door.
So
I
social
get shot,
distance.
so.
Well,
I'm very social distancing. Nobody's coming in my door. That's
yes,
the whole-
but any letters, postcards, texts?
Yeah, actually, let's see. I did get a postcard recently, and I was like, why are they sending me a postcard? But no, text. Oh my God, I'm surprised I haven't got one since we've been talking. I'm sure we'll get one before I'm done here.
Live from Atlanta. The minute-by-minute analysis of Brent's mail delivery.
Let me just play you. There was one that's like,
so Brent, go and check the front door, see if there's anything else.
let me see if I can even post up one of these.
This
guys
live
here.
streaming thing, it's just unbelievably amazing.
Let's see if I could post one of these things I've got, and I'd post it. Oops, there's my football playing right there. Let me turn that down.
And we can talk about that Washington football team, which I have the hardest time calling them that.
Check out this text I got yesterday. First of all, well, hi, Brenton. So first of all, you know, they have no clue as to who I am. Nobody calls me that except my mom.
Is that a real name, Brenton?
Yeah, that's my full name. Like I said, only
okay.
my mom calls me that when I've done something bad. So hi, Brenton. I'm Joe with Glow Vote and Inside Jokes. I don't know what the hell that is. What the hell is Glow Vote and Inside Jokes? Glow is Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, as far as I know. That's the only Glow I really know. But anyway, I'm Joe with Glow, Vote, and Inside Jokes, and the new Georgia Project Action Fund. We're texting today because we made history on November 3rd, and now all eyes are on Georgia. Do you feel like those in power discounted the power of our votes during the general election? That's the tweet. What am I supposed to answer that? I mean, what are these people saying this stuff for? It's just getting ridiculous.
Listen, and by the way, GPAF.
That's like, if you did the Kellogg's cornflakes ad version of that, it was Kellogg's cornflakes are awesome. They're yellow and crispy, and there's lots of them in a packet, and you can buy it at your local supermarket, and it'll change your breakfast experience. It's like, wow, I got to go and buy some.
That would not make me buy any.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, I would not.
So yeah, these tweets are getting. I mean, these texts are getting more ridiculous by the minute.
So, which candidate was that text for?
It didn't even say. I couldn't even tell you if this is for Republicans or Democrats.
I'm going, what?
I couldn't tell you a thing about this. It's just ridiculous.
Wow.
Well, there's a serious lack of marketing talent in the South, Brent. We know that.
Wow.
I don't know.
Wow.
Nice job.
Pretty overgeneralization, but okay,
Allow me to say I had nothing to do with what Keith just said to those colleagues of mine who actually are in Atlanta right now.
And by the way, thanks to that one viewer from the South.
I think you just turned him off there, Keith.
Actually, that one viewer that started out watching us is from London, and she's an MBE. So watch out what you have to say.
Now, MBE, wasn't it? I saw in my Beatles feed that George Harrison turned down an OBE because he was miffed over Ringo being a knight. Yeah. It wasn't Ringo, actually. It was. What's the difference? Well, it might have been. So what is an OBE anyway?
An Order of the British Empire, which is kind of like the Medal of Honor that presidents give to people here. Order of the British Empire given by the Queen for services to, if you use her full title, I think it's something like Her Royal Majesty Imperial something or other. It's recognition by imperialism that you helped it.
Dennis, what did you say?
I was just trying to complete the title. It had like Empress, Queen of this and that, and the last part was Defender of the Faith, wasn't it?
I think so.
And then there are other levels from knighthood to OBE and
isn't there a CBE or something in there too?
Yeah,
that's a lesser. There's OBE, CBE. There's knighthoods. If you're a woman, it's a damehood. That's what my friend Claire Fox got. Not bad for a Trotskyist. She's a dame in the House of Lords now.
And the fact that the empire is pretty much completely deprecated hasn't lessened the value of that honor?
Well, clearly, Michael, you have to watch The Crown's latest season where you get to learn about the Commonwealth.
I have watched it, and I do know about the Commonwealth.
Spoiler alert.
It's not the Order of the British Commonwealth.
Well, Steve hasn't seen the show, so let's be careful.
I haven't seen the last two.
Well, let's just ask this question. This is your test question. How many states is the Queen the head of state still today of?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah,
because it includes like Canada and maybe Australia.
It does.
Yeah, I don't know about New Zealand because Canada has a governor general who reports to the Queen.
I mean, really cool places like Jamaica and Barbados.
What's he reporting?
Barbados.
What's he reporting back to the Queen?
Bermuda.
What's the governor in Canada reporting back to the Queen at this point?
Things are okay. Things are pretty good.
Who won the Grey Cup, or I don't know what's
His
that?
primary job is counting beaver pelts.
There are 16 nations that she is still the head of state of.
Wow,
That's a good count.
Wow. See, I had guessed higher, but
What was it at its peak?
In the 50s, I think.
Wow.
Wow.
Well, just before divestiture, that began in what? Partitioning of India, Pakistan was 48, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Was that in 48 or 47? Wasn't that all that happened?
Yeah.
No, it's
It's funny. I was just looking at the map to see which countries had the most nuclear weapons, and if I'm not mistaken, India and Pakistan are like third and fourth.
so there's a big debate in British history, like when was the British Empire finally, going to fail? When was it inevitable it was going to fail? And the right answer is when the Japanese took over Malaysia in the Second World War. But the popular answer is when Monty Python started making fun of it.
well, I don't know if you've read Herman Wouk's World War II novels.
Oh yeah.
Winds of
His
War?
theory, and it's one I heard from a history teacher as well, is that the U.S. delayed entry into the war until it was sure that the British Empire was done for, and then
It sure looked like that, didn't it?
So actually my PhD was about the economic reasons why empires can't survive in capitalism, why capitalism always gives rise to new winners, basically, on larger scale than the previous winners. So I live in this world where Britain's replacement by the United States that took about 100 years is now being played out again between America and China, which Steve hates going on about. But I actually believe that
No, I hate that you're wrong about it.
America plays the role of Britain in the next stage of history, basically.
Keith,
I think we're burying the lead here, though.
Paul Kennedy's analysis of that back in the 1980s.
There's been a few books that write about this from the point of view of go back to the Roman Empire, but there's a specific thing to do with capitalism, which is capitalism's good at innovation, and innovation leads to productivity, which leads to low prices, which means that people who innovated last can't compete with people who innovate next.
Where does the switch over between someone like Trump and someone like Biden play in that formula?
Well, there's layers. Economics is kind of the base layer, and then you've got politics, and then you've got civil society, and they all go at different speeds and relate to each other in different ways. So you can't really predict politics. It's completely unpredictable, but you can predict economics. What you can't predict is how politics reacts to economics or how society reacts to politics and economics. That's where it gets murky. So if you think of Trump as, at least in part, produced by the failure of the political class to save the American dream, which was an economic problem, that probably would be too direct. It isn't as simple as that, but there's some truth in it. And if you think of Biden as a reaction against the extremes to which Trump went, but still having to deal with the same set of problems at the economic level, that's probably accurate as well, but too simplistic. So the constant is the politics is a variable, and society's reaction to politics is even more of a variable.
Well, so China's ability to handle better the virus puts them in a much stronger position in that sort of philosophy, I imagine.
Yeah, but China's got its own version of this. China's Communist Party will not be able to survive Chinese capitalism success. So at some point, there'll be political change in China. And if they're clever, they'll manage that like Singapore did. If they're stupid, they'll be the victim of it.
I mean, they'll be Hong Kong.
And that's, again, how economics, the key driver in China is economics. There's going to be a huge middle class. They're all going to have electric vehicles. They're going to be traveling globally on vacations. They're going to be spending more money than anyone else in the world. And they're going to experience different political systems. And, China will change because of that. It's inevitable. How it changes, it could be negative, by the way. They could crack down and become heavy-handed. or it could open up. That's where human choice comes into it.
Well, there's a phase of economic development which builds the middle class, which builds purchasing power. If you look back to the early industrialization in the 20th century with Henry Ford, he was paying workers enough so that they could buy things, namely his cars. And I think China's in that stage now, where they are building purchasing power in their population. We're at a stage where purchasing power in the population is now precarious. I mean, we've got a comfortable class, and we've got a struggling class. And I don't know how you innovate your way out of that, because a lot of innovations make it easier for people to produce more with less hours. And you've got people having little or no work to do.
That's the whole.
They have low-paid jobs, they have service jobs, they have hamburger flipping jobs. That's a pearl that I don't know that innovation can solve.
Dennis?
Well, I think it can. By the way, Michael, I just wanted to say I read the article from the Atlantic that you put in the application this week, and it's germane a little bit here. It was very good. But getting back to the innovation part of it, in my study, I look at economic K waves, and I see this cyclical boom and bust thing happening, and the middle class gets built when disruptive innovation needs to be built out and distributed, diffused throughout the economy. So roads need to get built, fiber optic cable needs to get laid, computers have to be built and distributed, et cetera. And in every one of those situations, you have about a 30-year, 25 to 30-year pulse where you build a middle class, and then economics takes over again and looks for ways to economize and make greater efficiencies. And that's when you end up with a lot of people flipping burgers. And because there aren't enough jobs making the computers or building out the infrastructure, and capital sends a lot of those jobs offshore where it can get things done for a fraction of what they'd pay the burgeoning middle class here. I see us at the beginning of another iteration of this cycle where all things sustainability oriented are going to drive the build out of a new infrastructure, which includes not only electric vehicles, but new ways of generating electricity, and especially new ways of providing fresh water. Fresh water is the thing that we don't talk about, and it's the most perilous issue that's before us, even more than nuclear weapons.
Isn't that something that Musk and Gates are focusing on?
Water?
Water.
There are a lot of efforts underway now. I get a Google alert every day about water projects around the world, and it's really quite impressive. A lot of people don't realize that the United States is third in the world at desalinization. We just, within the last couple of years, opened a desalinization plant in Carlsbad, California, generating, Keith, you live near there. Is that about 50 million gallons of water per day for the greater San Diego area? Something like that. Huge amount. The other countries that do a lot of desalinization are like Saudi Arabia and somebody else, but we need to do a lot more of that. In fact, beyond desalinization, we need to build a water grid in the country that's the counterpart of the electric grid.
So is that a focus of sustainability?
Absolutely. And it's also a great way to generate a lot of jobs that drive people into the middle class.
Would there be a way, are people thinking about creating energy from desalinization? So desalinate water motion creates movement through hydroelectric dams, power comes out of that?
Well,
I would think desalinization is a power drain.
Yeah.
Not a power generator.
Yeah, it's endothermic. But the good news is that there's a technology that's already commercially available that's not being used much yet, that uses heat from below the Earth's crust to drive electric generation. There's a company up in Sonoma Valley that's got 13 generating stations generating about 750 megawatts, serving San Francisco and surrounding areas.
Does Greenland does some of that, don't they?
Greenland does a lot. Iceland.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Iceland's entire system.
I'm sorry.
I was saying Iceland's entire electricity generation is generated that way, and it's free for citizens.
Hawaii too. Well, I don't know if it's free, but all these places that sit on top of volcanoes can basically generate all the electricity they want. And most of the Rocky Mountain area is suitable for this kind of generation. They estimate there's about 2,000 or 3,000 times the amount of electricity or energy under the Rocky Mountains to produce electricity than you would likely need.
So that's the Yosemite. Thank you, Brent.
I don't get it.
Yeah. Yosemite.
Yosemite.
Still don't get it.
Well, you
It's
didn't.
like hailing a
come
cat.
on.
No,
It was
I'm serious.
Yosemite.
It was a Trump speech where he mispronounced Yosemite,
Oh, okay. There you
and
go.
he called it Yosemite.
Kind of like 2 Corinthians.
Yeah, and that's I'll take 2, please.
In fact, there's
And
a
that-
museum that sells T-shirts with Yosemite on it.
2 Corinthians walk into a bar.
Oh God.
So what is the Corinthians? I don't get that one either.
If you have to
Clueless.
explain a joke, it's
I
best to
am.
move on. Whenever you need to explain a joke, just move on.
Thanks for the moderator, Steve.
Derek, please.
Waiter, get that man a clean ashtray.
Oh my God.
Exactly.
I know. Of course, I'm the one who brought it down. I didn't mean to do that. Honestly, it just came out of my mouth. Sorry. I
What
apologize.
about that one with the 2 Corinthians in the semi? Yeah, anyway.
There we were talking about the future of economics, politics, and social society, and now where are we?
Well, I think we covered that, didn't we?
Yeah. Well,
I saw a natural end. I don't know about the rest of you, but I felt it.
Okay,
Did you
so
read,
in the remaining
Obama's-
5 minutes
Obama-
that you have, Frank, what do you want to cover now?
The Magic Washington football team play.
before we do that, I just wanted
okay.
to point out that Obama's new biography, the 3rd one, he discloses that the way he got girlfriends in college was by speaking knowledgeably about Marx and Marcuse. Herbert Marcuse. And me and my wife were watching it, and I commented to her that I used the whole of the Frankfurt School in my efforts to find girlfriends.
And how did that go?
Pretty well, actually.
Yeah,
Let's
he's
not
married.
talk about that.
I just
Fred Hayek.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Included.
Yeah. Oh,
If you-
I was
that's life.
I was really happy to purchase the Obama book on audiobooks because it's voiced by him. And I haven't started it yet, but I have to finish this Lee Child Jack Reacher novel first. Then I will get into the Obama book, and I will listen to Barack Obama's dulcet and franchot tones as he reads his own book. I'm looking forward to that.
Hey, my
I'm
mom is
it's
loving
a lot more soothing than listening to Hillary Clinton read her book.
I hear
I was surprised by how well Mueller did reading his book. It was okay. It was good. I mean, I a lot of times because I listen now so much more than I read, which I hate to admit, but hey, I just did. and because when I'm walking around in London, or I'm on when I'm on the tube, as I occasionally do get on the tube, I listen. And it's also much easier for me to exercise while I'm listening to something like that, because exercise to me is horrible and boring. And the next thing I know, I've gotten through 8 chapters of something, and oh my God, I just did an hour's worth of weightlifting. So it's actually been a really good thing. And and I gotta say, there's hardly any kind of book that you can't listen to that some good voice person can't make interesting. I'm talking about histories and technology and dramas, comedies, just about anything. I haven't heard any kind of book that couldn't be, well, if it's well written or well read, be made interesting. And I've found this to be just one of the great things of our generation.
Hot from our analysis of mail in Atlanta, we now move to exercise in London.
And I find it I meant to say this, Brent. I found it very interesting that the mail is getting through so well in Atlanta right now. And it's, so what happened to this? Hey, let's screw up the postal service. It sounds to me like it's exactly the opposite that's happening down there. And I thought your other point, which was interesting, was, why should I vote if the voting is so screwed up? I think there's some couple of odd things at play down there.
I don't know about the mail thing, because I ordered some stuff, some Rams paraphernalia. It takes a couple of weeks to get here. I don't know. I'm not buying that. Although my vote did count. So you got to balance the two off. It takes a little longer to get my stuff. Vote gets counted. I can live with that.
How do you know
All right.
that the vote was counted?
Because there's a website, and I don't know if this is nationwide or not, but you can go. There's a website that we can use. It's Ballot Tracks.
Yeah.
And you can go and put in your information, and it will tell you, where things are in the process. Like if you have asked for a ballot to be sent, the ballot has been sent, your vote has been received, your vote has been approved, all that kind of stuff.
So
we
the
have
only
it in Washington as well. It's
it-
it's a web tracker.
Is that a national thing?
Well,
the
it
only-
has to be done state by state, because elections are conducted by states.
Yeah.
But I think almost every state has the equivalent.
There is one here in
So
California.
it's like looking at shipping trackers.
It really is.
Your package has been shipped. Your package is in transit. Your package is in your city. Your package is out for delivery. They do the same thing with votes.
Yeah, your package was delivered, and then you go to look for it, and it's not there. That happened to me last week. Pissed me off. Anyway,
It was delivered.
That's
They
it.
just didn't say where.
yeah, no, it was delivered to someone in the office, sitting at the reception desk. I haven't been to my office in 8 months. That's it. I got nothing else. This is.
I was wondering, when the how do you say it? Inauguration happens. When the inauguration happens,
Yeah.
and COVID is on, obviously they're not going to let people, crowd that area in front where Trump said it was the biggest crowd ever, and it wasn't. So this is probably going to be the smallest crowd ever.
Except for Johnson on the airplane.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Actually, Calvin Coolidge was sworn in the parlor of his father's home in Vermont.
Yeah. His father swore him in, right? Because he a judge or something.
Sworn in, right? His father
That's
was
because Harding died, right? That was the whole thing.
Right.
That,
Harding died.
Yeah.
Be interesting if they tried to do a virtual event, and it looked something like the Graham Norton show, which I watched the other night. It had 5 or 6 pages of 150 or 200 Zoom in audience members, and then they kept sliding them by each time, and he made the comment of, oh, look at that, they're sliding by another 150 people. And when they clapped, all of the audio was on, either that or they faked the clapping sounds, and it sounded like he had a studio audience. I mean, you guys, I imagine you could probably do that with 1 million people.
Are you kidding? You
2
could do
million?
that with football stadiums. Most of these stadiums, there's nobody in them. But if you didn't know any better, you would think. I mean, it sounds exactly like a regular game, but there's hardly anybody there.
So this is a good segue, if Steve allows me, to talk about the tech that's underlying that, because in the history of streaming, it's a one-way technology. So you can watch a stream, and because it's one way, it doesn't matter if there's a delay. So if you're a minute behind in a game, the worst thing that can happen is you get an alert saying there was a goal when you're still watching before the goal. But for these technologies, it has to be two-way, and it has to be with no latency. So an incredibly interesting thing has happened, which is, and I'll use some acronyms now, but RTMP, which is the streaming protocol, the companies which have been working with WebRTC, which is the communications protocol we use here, have now taken over streaming as well. In other words, they're using WebRTC for streaming so that they can incorporate two-way. And they're building security, and they're also building the ability to do polls and things like that within the stream. And the reason I know this is a company I work with called Cosmo Software, which is a Singapore-based company. The founder of that is a French PhD who's right in the core of all of the standard stuff that's been done over the last few years to make that possible. So we kind of move, and in the last few months, two massive companies, one's called Hopin, which in 9 months has gone from zero to being worth $2 billion, are building events platforms on WebRTC that scale to millions of participants, but with two-way interaction.
So I have a question for you, Keith, based on what I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is very fascinating to me, and here's why. Because I just wrote a blog about this. So the world of sales for years has been part of the strategy has been conferences. So the CES conference or the Promax or whatever, NAB, these conferences where you get to go and there's a floor and you can go handle stuff and people can pitch their products to you. And then there's private meeting rooms where, you can go and sit and have a private meeting and someone either pitches to you or you can pitch to them. There's breakfasts, there's lunches, there's dinners, there's conference rooms, there's schmoozing, there's face-to-face, there's all that stuff. It's been my experience so far anyway, that the conference part of these kinds of live events has been fairly well worked out in the virtual world, but that the sales part, that stuff that requires more than just, hey, I'm going to go sit and listen to a bunch of people do a panel, or I'm going to sit in a large room and listen to somebody give a speech like a TED Talk. That stuff works, but the other part of it, it hasn't been figured out yet. Are you saying that this is something that these people are starting to consider?
Yeah, no, that it's getting very figured out now. If you go to look at what Hopin, it's Hopin, go look at what they can do. They basically give you all the elements of an event, including an exhibition and booths and sales tools that you would have at a physical event. I attended the Informations event last week on SPACs, special purpose acquisition companies, which are quite the rage right now in terms of late stage private companies going public. And there were some bankers at that event who represent the sales part of SPACs, meeting with companies that were considering doing SPACs, and there were sidebar rooms where they could go and talk to each other directly, for example, all built into the whole package. So it is getting worked out.
What does that stand
Well, then
for
you
again?
just
Specs? What is
Special purpose acquisition company. It's where Chamath Palihapitiya, which is hard to say unless you've said it lots of times, is a former Facebook guy who started Social Capital. He created the SPAC for Virgin Galactic, which is now listed on the New York Stock Exchange. He's just done another one he's doing one for Open Door, and he's doing another one for Clover Health. And basically the way it works is it's kind of ingenious. So let's imagine I'm going to do one. I'll just say I'm starting a SPAC and I'll go and form it legally in Delaware, which is just a company. I'll own 100% of the equity on day one. I'll then go and raise 300 to 500 million from investors saying, I plan to merge with one of these big private companies. If you give me 300 to 500 million, you'll own 20% of it once it's public. They give you the 300 to 500 million, and they have the right to get it back within 2 years if you do not merge with one of these private companies, and they have the right to vote against the company you choose. So it's quite secure. That 300 to 500 million is very secure. Then you go and find a company to merge with that is worth around 2 billion, maybe more. You merge with them, and the listed SPAC turns into the company that you merged with. But you, the SPAC organizer, end up with about 5% of the equity, but you didn't put any money in.
Is that SPAC with a C or SPAC with an X?
C.
So, and Hopin is, what's the URL?
Hopin is just a private company that is at the venture stage, but is now valued at $2 billion after 9 months of being in the market.
And they are currently easily findable.
Hopin,
online.
yeah. So it's based out of
Hopin.com.
Manchester, England. It's one of the few big success stories coming out of England.
And
Yeah,
it
it's
was
Hopin.com.
Along with the Crown.
And there's one here in the Valley that does the same as them called Run the World, which is a Chinese immigrant, American Chinese startup, very young team that's also doing very well.
So was Hopin a SPAC?
No, Hopin's not a SPAC. Hopin's too early. That would happen later. SPACs are for companies that can show, between now and 2025, getting to somewhere between 300 and 500 million in revenue. So the company I do corp dev for, Infarm, is a candidate for that, for example. But they're later stage. They've already raised 200 or 300 million in venture capital.
So they Hopin had a virtual conference about SPACs, correct?
In the information had one that they used the Hopin platform to do it on.
Okay, so now we're back to that. And your point about this interactive two-way.
It basically means, it's a big deal. It probably means the end of CDNs like Akamai for video, because you don't need them anymore. You don't need buffering or edge of network delivery for streams that are two-way. There's too much latency in a CDN for that. So you couldn't have a proper two-way conversation. So this new world of video is going to create a new generation of network services that do real-time two-way scaled video, like in football stadiums, for example. So if you were imagining digital seats at a game with VR headsets, where the crowd is not just watching, but has the ability to interact, like betting, for example, it would require this technology.
So I had actually posited that some of the things that would need to be done in order to make the sales part of any kind of an interactive conference work would have to be some kind of leveraging of VR and AR.
Yep.
Is
Actually,
that part of
it works just as well in 2D, to be honest. I think AR and VR just make it appear more natural, but they don't change the fundamental technical challenges. AR and VR are actually quite easy on the network because they're usually all the graphics libraries are stored on the devices and messages are being delivered across the network to trigger things on the devices.
So what I was thinking about in terms of AR would be demonstration of product.
Yeah, demonstration of product is a good example of that. It depends what the product is, whether it's physical or not, of course, but yeah.
So what I'm hearing here is that you're suggesting that a technology that rests on top of a two-way protocol is what is going to turn out to be a driver for disruption of the industry. What I don't hear here is an assessment of what good is two-way interactive.
Yeah, it's no good for Netflix. For streaming is perfectly fine for anything that is in the world of viewing or listening. It's when you need to move to engagement between the watcher and the deliverer that streaming doesn't work.
But you're not answering my question, which is what good is two-way interactive in terms of reaching so-called engagement?
Isn't that the definition of engagement?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
don't
think
know.
Steve's asking a different question.
I was at a conference, virtually. I forget which one it was. Several of them I've been attended, and one in particular. It may have been sitting on top of Hopin. I'm not sure, and it might have been Ray Wong's conference.
No, he's using something else. But yeah,
Okay,
I know
but
where you're going.
the basic scenario is that there was a window that supported streaming a la what we're doing and what Brent does quite a bit of. And there was no two-way interactivity there. So there was also this capability, which took me quite a while to master, of being able to navigate around. In fact, I recall being on the phone with Brent trying to get him to explain how to do it. And finally, I think I got the inventor of the software to explain it to me, which was how intuitive the UI was. And the bottom line is that I saw Doc Searles floating around in whatever that virtual environment was, and I wanted to talk to him. Well, it took me 2 days to figure out how to do it. And then we basically had a FaceTime conversation that I could have done by calling him up. So
yeah.
What I'm saying is that, you're talking about the value proposition of a conference and essentially virtualizing the hallway conversation or the water cooler conversation, which is at the heart of, at least in the Valley and in the technology arena, is the heart of why those conferences are successful, because essentially they allow people to get together as peers and also people who are aspiring to understand stuff, being able to actually approach and interact with people. That's the value proposition.
No, you're right.
So I'm not clear that the Hopin strategy or the other one that you mentioned, whether that actually speaks to this, or is it, another, for Frank's benefit, is it another Warner's Cube vision of the future that turns out never to happen?
I think it's different to that. It's I would characterize it as being very similar to the nanosecond before Uber came into existence, when all of the things Uber does already existed, but separately. There were already private hire cars, there was already maps and tracking, there was already online payment through mobile, but no one had put it all together and made Uber yet. And so in this world, there's already communications, two-way, there's already streaming, there's already chat that can sit alongside streaming to create a separate channel, if you like, with the stream that lets you talk. Watch parties are a bit like that. So my watch party right now on Facebook for this Gillmor Gang show, there's comments, and I can real-time comment with anyone watching. And they're watching a stream, but the chat is two-way. So there's all these separate components. What Hopin and Run the World and others are doing is they're creating protocols which integrate them into single experiences that software developers can now write on top of.
Okay, but I want to go back to what Michael and Denis were talking about tangentially in terms of how capital formation or the building of the middle class to be able to have an experience which allows them to aggregate together and create the economy that needs to support these things. That's what I'm not hearing about here. And I'm inarticulate in the way that I'm trying to tie the two together. But Denis or Michael, do you see what I'm trying to get at here?
Well, there's a whole level of interaction that is very hard to put into an algorithm. There's a great deal of random interaction that happens at a trade show or an event that has to do, as you said, with hallway conversations, with milling, with wandering, with catching people's attention. There are also other kinds of things that happen at trade shows and events that you can put into algorithms. I mean, you make appointments for presentations. You have conferences to write contracts, or to make contacts to follow up later. And lots of things can go into this kind of algorithm. There's also a je ne sais quoi. But when you create a new environment, a new kind of je ne sais quoi will manifest itself as people figure out ways to exploit it and hack it.
Yeah, I think the short answer to your question is what Michael just said. We're only at the invention stage yet, and if I could be, I don't know a lot about SPACs, but if I think I would call it a minimally viable product, an MVP. And it's only when the market takes an MVP and says, oh, well, we can do this with it, or we can do that with it, that it becomes commercial and it starts, driving sustainable industries that drive jobs, that drive middle class formation, and all the rest of that.
And that might be separate from the business strategy of a company that is, as Keith is talking, trying to put all of these things together. There's this whole other dynamic that's at play constantly, which is how are the big vendors like Apple and Android, et cetera, how are they, flexing their muscles because of the ubiquity of their hardware to be able to, Amazon as well. How are they going to create experiences that people just enjoy using? And out of that comes it's like the @ mention or the retweet or the hashtag, these user inventions that turn out to be dominant in the phase of these architectures that actually takes off.
So it's interesting, the guy I'm working with is called Alexandre Gouliard. He's part of the standards committee at the W3C, but he's also his company Millicast, I put the link in, and Cosmos Software, those are his companies. They consult, for example, with Google. And so the key technology that let Google do its streaming game service comes from this, because the streaming game service has to be both a stream and interactive, and there can't be latency, because if you press the trigger, the gun has to shoot right away. So it's streaming game information, and when you pull the trigger, that has to be synchronous with the game and all the other players, if it's a multiplayer game. So that's really hard, and streaming software just can't do it. So so this stuff has been created for use cases initially in gaming, actually, but it goes beyond gaming. So Airbnb have a company town hall, and this guy's software is built in there. And the town hall, they've created a stadium-like interface that holds 5,000 people and a stage. And the CEO stands on the stage to give his all hands talk, and hands can go up around the stadium, and you zoom in and you see the person's name and you hear their voice. And it's 5,000 people, which is a lot.
Or are they avatars?
They're avatars, but that's a choice. It could be little circles with real life faces as well.
So a moderator
Which one
has
is
to
that?
recognize them. They put their hand up. I mean, how is it?
That's done visually through the software.
Is that Millicast or Cosmo software?
Cosmo is the libraries, and Millicast is a service that you can build on top of to build stuff yourself.
So how do people like me that don't play games, except this one, how do we get into that stream and create and join groups that end up with some viral power?
So the Clubhouse, which we've talked about in the gang before, is an example of a service that leverages two-way audio in their case, at scale though, very large scale. So an example I'll give you here, it's a real example. NBC built a cloud switcher using Millicast. So NBC and Amazon Prime had the contract to do the US beach volleyball competition a couple of months ago, and they couldn't do it because of COVID the way they normally did it. So what they did is the production studio was all in the cloud, and they used Millicast to build a switcher, and they put remote control cameras around the edge of the court on the sand. They could both control the cameras from the cloud and switch between them in the cloud and create a stream out to Amazon that did normal streaming for the world. But then they could put an audience in the stadium that could interact with the events, like applauding in real time as things happen and not on screens in the stadium. So if you think of all those different bits, the audience, the remote cameras, the switching in the cloud, the one thing that would have killed all of that is even a second of latency would have killed it. So it had to be, milliseconds of latency is okay, but no more than 30 milliseconds or something like that, 50. So streaming technology couldn't have done that.
Okay, I understand that, but you didn't answer my question, which is how do people align with the technology if it's, is this going to be built on the back of, like Twitch, gamers and nothing else? Where is the combination of existing technologies that is going to break out, the sort of opposite of jumping the shark?
The way I frame the problem in my own mind is, I call it the unborn child. I've used that phrase before on the gang. It's all the elements of life exist, but it hasn't yet been born. And so in a way, there isn't an answer to your question, because the answer is going to come from developers who leverage this underlying stuff into experiences. It needs people to write code and imagine things they can do that they couldn't do before. Restream and Twitch are last generation in that sense. They have elements. They had to do some hard things to create interactivity around a stream. It's going to become a lot easier, and there's going to be a lot richer things you can build, but someone has to build them. So the next generation of Twitch or the next generation of Restream, like, we'd be able to bring an audience member could say, hey, I've got a question. And we'd be able, from thousands of viewers, we'd be able to bring them in, let them ask their question, and then let them go. So things that now the infrastructure for that is really expensive. Like when live TV brings people in from the outside and they're live in the studio with the other guests, all of that stuff becomes trivial.
So what you're saying, it sounds like, is this technology transformation that's occurring now for around the notion of interactivity is going to get to the point where it's so baked into the general infrastructure that people will actually start using it.
Yeah.
Probably not for interactivity the way that you're describing it and the way that the companies that are investing in it think is going to happen, but something else that's going to happen.
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
You know, it's
I
funny.
wish-
It makes me think about those days when to get a live shot into a studio, you had to call the phone company and have them drop a loop at a location, a physical hard loop, that then cameras would connect to it so that it would be engaged two-way communications back to the studio from whatever remote you happen to be at which was really expensive, time consuming, and had to be done in advance, usually a couple of days in advance, if not a week in advance, eventually becoming, microwaves, which was like the next step, which brought the cost down. But it seems to me like this kind of new engaging technology will bring the costs back up again until it's been utilized by enough people and figured out in such a way that the cost can come back down.
Brent, you did essentially a virtual conference with in the CRM space with 5 leading companies. What was the interactivity there, and how did are you moving toward using this kind of technology that Keith is talking about, or are you interested in something different?
No, I've actually been, as Keith was talking, I've been going to all the different websites and doing searches on this Alexander. I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
Gouillard.
Yeah, that him. So, no, it's really interesting because, we did the executive roundtable using LinkedIn as a streaming platform, but also it streamed to other places. But LinkedIn was the kind of the foundation, because one of the things that LinkedIn has is a built-in community. We're each connected to thousands of people, and with people can register or just get the notification when we go live, and that aggregates people. And what happened was we did this roundtable with 5 execs, and it was part of the 2.5 hours of programming. And we had over 1,100 comments coming in, so much so that they were coming so fast I couldn't even plop them up on the screen. But there was multiple levels of interaction going on. There was us on screen interacting with the folks, the executives. There was a back channel interaction between us as the hosts and the executives who were our guests. So there was an interaction taking place on screen, behind screen, and then the third level was people that were just watching us, and they were commenting in real time, and they were having their own conversations. So it took the TV concept to a collaboration concept where you're not just a spectator, you're pretty much a full-blown participant. And like I said, 2.5 hours, 1,100 comments. That just blew us away. We didn't have any idea that was going to happen. And we're going to do another one this Wednesday too. It's where we kind of built on that, and we said, well, what about actually watching in live, in real time, watching a keynote that's going to be broadcast virtually. So we
go ahead, you can say it.
Okay, all right. So Dreamforce is, the opening keynote of Dreamforce is Wednesday with Mark Benioff and a cast of thousands, or at least a couple of other people. So we were like, why not do this simulcast, the keynote, but have us, me and Paul Greenberg, we'll be on screen on the side, almost sort of like, with watching a football game, you got your color guy, you got your analyst guy. And as the program is proceeding, we're commenting in real time, and we're also monitoring, who's watching along with us in the comment section on LinkedIn, and popping them up and discussing some of the things they may bring up.
Okay, and
so that's very cool.
Frank, I just want to close the loop on this. Denis, you were one of the analysts on the 5 CRM presidents, or whatever their title was. What was that like? Because to me, that part of the experience, when Brent talks about 2.5 hours, maybe 45 minutes of that 2.5 hours was sort of a wind up where various analysts commented on the process. And to me, that came very close to virtualizing this ability to align with experts in the industry. One of the functions of a live conference that I think was moved over quite successfully. What were your reactions to that?
Well, I have several reactions. Number one, it went by really fast. As a person who creates content, you know, I'm used to writing things and having things go that quickly is really interesting. You have to be succinct. I would say that not just because Brent's here, but you guys got to find a way to monetize this. You know, I'd like to monetize my participation. Of course, I would do anything for Paul and Brent for no pay. I'm not concerned about that. But it's all very eye-opening. I have to tell you, as a person who does market research and writes about it, all of this is more than I want to know. I'm happy to get on camera and talk to folks about what I know, but I don't want to be responsible for plugging all the wires together.
Right, but that's the key. That's the key. Is these guys that I'm mentioning? They're really just building the underlying, plugging the wires together stuff, so that the next generation can be created.
So they're doing what Uber did. They put it all together, and and Uber being the next generation. I just did one with a group called the Global Entrepreneurship Global Entrepreneurship Network, which is a network of 180 entrepreneur groups around the world. And one of the early speeches was Richard Branson and people from the White House, and there were ministers from around the world who were involved in entrepreneurships in their countries. And I did two events where I spoke for an hour with an executive from two different companies about how their journey into entrepreneurship and what they do with their companies and how it can interface with an entrepreneur and how they could use their platforms. All that worked great. And there were thousands of interactions that I was completely unable, as the person who was moderating those interactions with those executives, completely unable to take advantage of. Every once in a while, I could look up and say, "Hey, Joan from Dubai just said blah blah blah," and try and get a reaction to that. But it never felt like I was able to bring enough of that into it to make it worthwhile. But that to me is, going back to my original premise when I started this beginning of this, was that's part of the conference part of it, but the trade show part of it is what I think we have an issue with. And it sounds to me, Keith, like hop in and run the world, or trying to figure that out.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with Discord, the app called Discord. So just to use the example of today, I watched the Manchester United game streaming from the UK on Sky Sports. I had the Discord channel for a community group called the United Stand, which has about 1 million members. And they also had the YouTube channel for the United Stand. And this guy was just as Brent was just describing, this guy was commentating on the game as it was happening. And I was watching, there was a free kick, and the guy from YouTube said, "Oh, he scored." And that was like 30 seconds before I saw him score, so it pissed me off. That's where the latency in a stream can impact the possibility of community collaboration and shared experience.
Well, I think sports and gaming is a special case. Most things don't have to be that real time.
Yeah, no, exactly. A movie, it doesn't matter unless you're all watching together. Then it does. But a movie doesn't matter.
I mean,
So I
you
just
see
gotta,
a version of this on Twitter when people in different time zones start talking about what just happened on TV, and other people say, "No, no, don't, not yet, please."
yeah.
So imagine if there was such a thing as like in a studio, every device has a time code, and there's a time code generator, and they're all synced to the same time code. So things like that can't happen. Well, in the cloud, we don't have shared time code. There's no such thing. So there's a protocol that needs inventing to create synchronized experiences from a single streams.
So while I was listening to you just now, I got a LinkedIn notification. What was the name of the guy? Alexander
Gouillard.
Okay, so this is somebody else. Alexander somebody and one other liked Frank Radice's post that mentioned you, all new Gilmore gang,
Yeah, I was
special
looking at that.
day, etc. So why would that be sent right now? Probably because he's watching it, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
so we already have a real-time network that's already functioning pretty well.
It isn't real time, Steve. It's only because you're using the word real time loosely. In a strict sense, it isn't real time. There's seconds and sometimes 30 seconds of delay between all the different elements.
Yeah, of course. I understand your technical perspective. What I'm saying is that the notion of real time, from my perspective, is whatever comes to me in my time.
Yeah,
So
but that's like.
hang on a second. Hang on.
Right.
What we're Frank is in London. It's what time is it there? 8:39.
8:42.
Okay. You're Keith, you and Michael and I are on the West Coast, so we're in so-called real time. And Dennis and I believe Atlanta for Brent are on the same time zone, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So that kind of is the structure that someone was alluding to earlier about Twitter. Michael was about how Twitter basically rolls over from Europe, London, etc., in the early morning to the East Coast, and then from the East Coast to the West Coast, and then it recycles. That notification stream, whether or not it's the latency is 30 seconds or 11 hours, the way that I experience it is real time.
So what I'm hearing you say is all to do with how excellent what we've already got is, which I agree with. But it's a bit like when, I can't remember who said it, but somebody said no one will ever need more than 64K. And at the time, 64K was awesome.
640.
Well, now you could say no one will ever need more than 30 seconds of latency. No one's going to need milliseconds, but actually there's many, many use cases where you do need to get it down to milliseconds. And before now, you couldn't do that at scale. You could do it for 6 people like here, or even you can actually go up to a couple of hundred people with an experience like we've got here, but you can't go to a couple of million.
Yeah, the issue isn't really real time, it's synchronicity.
Synchronicity, yeah. But
Great
that
album.
tends to require real time if your source is, if the core media is time sensitive, then everything has to synchronize with that.
Do you agree with that, Dennis?
Yeah, I do.
So in other words, synchronicity is what?
Synchronicity isn't just getting it to be real time for you, it's getting it to be real time in 2 directions. So that nobody,
The key word that Keith used earlier was latency.
nobody has that.
For many things, latency doesn't matter. For some things, it does.
If everything has the same latency, it's synchronous.
Yeah. But if it's a sports game where somebody scores and Twitter is ahead of whatever that latency is, you get the goal scored before you see it.
Yeah, the spoiler problem. Yes, you've mentioned that several times. I would point out, however, that the perceived latency or lack of latency of, for example, starting with landlines going up to the satellite, there was a delay that is masked by the algorithms of the technology. This is also true with Skype when it was popular. And for example, this call, there's a lot of latency reduction, if you will. It's not about whether or not there's a delay. It's about what it feels like. We're having a conversation which feels like it's real. It feels like it's.
Yeah, but that's hard to do. The point, Steve, is that's relatively easy to do now. You know, I was the CEO of Santa Cruz Networks back in 2003-4 when we tried to do this, and we could just do it for up to about 200 people. We could do it. We had to manage each of the 200 streams independently, so that if somebody had bad bandwidth, they got the audio but not the video very well. You could just about do it. Now it's really a lot easier to do because the codecs have got better and the networks got better. So
Hardware got better too.
yeah.
What did
Now, so the stuff that I'm talking about is still hard today, but it's all the bits are now in place where it's going to get a lot easier very quickly. And Hopin is an example of a company that has already built on top of that stuff you couldn't do even 6 months ago.
Well, it seems to me that from this conversation, if I were running the technology division of some media company, why would I ever care about using a satellite ever again?
Yeah, you wouldn't.
Yeah. So I actually see that people are still using satellites to this day. You see it all the time. Not as much as you would have seen it maybe 6 months ago or a year ago, but you talk. It's funny, you talk about delays and how we used to hide the delay in the delay of taking the shot before that person spoke, because it took more time for the person asking the question to get the question to the person on the other end of the satellite before that person heard it and then started answering.
Yeah.
So you'd make a graphic design or something that felt like the world was spinning and it zoomed in on that person, and then you took them and it didn't feel like there was latency, but there was.
Yeah, you see that all the time now, that satellite is now the worst way to bring someone into the studio. The internet's better than satellite. Yeah. And one of Millicast's biggest customers, I'm just wondering whether I'm giving anything away here, but I don't think I am, is NBC Universal. And the reason they are is they're working on real-time delivery of media with interaction. So imagine American Idol, where the voting can happen simultaneously with a show.
Right, but
which they're trying to do anyway, but without that technology. I mean, look, if you think about it, even before that, the old 800, 900 phone numbers that you would call would be the way to do any kind of sort of real-time polling and surveying.
Yeah.
But how do you connect continents if you're not using satellites? I mean, the internet is carried by satellite, isn't it? Between continents?
No, mostly not. It's mostly carried by fiber these days.
Well, my local cable head end is probably receiving its signal from satellite still. Well, I haven't driven out there to check it.
People understand the latency. In fact, these days it's only, because everybody's on a cell phone, there's a latency of maybe as much as 2 seconds that is masked by the way that it's
delayed. Yeah.
Yes, correct. So if you come across a connection which is very high bandwidth, like a Fios connection, like you have, Keith, or something like that, that sounds unnatural now. We're so used to the delay being built in to the feeling of this conversation. We couldn't have this conversation today, not just because of the lack of latency or perceived latency, but because we accept. I mean, half the time when Denis jumps in and says something, because of the AGC algorithm, I can't hear it. also because of my AGC is, fading. But we accept a certain degree of incompetence on the part of the technology as normal.
But let's just rewind to the use case that got us started on this whole path, which was creating a virtual stadium where there's a sporting event happening and there is a distant crowd that's responding to it. That's a use case where you just want to get the latency out so that the cheers come in response to the play.
Yeah, or you synthesize the response to the play and nobody knows the difference.
Which is what happened, which is happening right now.
Yeah. That's what Brent's watching. Not this conversation. Yes, exactly. All right. I think that's
I'm good until the 10 minutes because the Rams are about to come on. So
okay, yeah. And then things get serious, right?
yeah, exactly.
All the Twitchers are gonna move off. All right. I don't
So
think
wait a minute. I just got this interesting notification from CNN. Donald Trump admits it's hard to get the Supreme Court as legal options dwindle. There you go.
What a shame.
And that's why I'm out of the hospital room.
It's hard to get the Supreme Court.
Well, maybe you want to go back. The Bill de Blasio just reversed himself and is reopening schools in
Elementary schools. Yeah.
For the
Yeah.
youngsters.
For young kids.
Yeah.
All right.
Because, young kids can't get it.
Okay.
Well, they're expendable.
Yeah. Like old people.
I can't wait for January 5th.
Me neither, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What? January 5th is the, for Republicans, January 6th. I can't wait till then.
John Freud.
Don't say that down here.
Is my friend. All right. Keith, any last thoughts? I think, Dennis, you're good. Frank? Yes.
I'm
okay.
good.
That's it. Okay.
Wait a minute. I'm not good. This has been fascinating. So this is what happens after I drop off at the 55 minutes.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. We go for another hour.
Good to know this.
On Friday, but you would have been gone to your game or your show.
No, we took off Friday, so yeah.
So you got to do what the audience do. Go to t.me/Gillmor gang, and then go to TechCrunch and watch the on-demand version that you weren't in.
Speaking of TechCrunch, don't think I've seen anything posted from the last show yet there, Steve.
No.
Yeah, it's coming down your virtual wire any second now.
Oh.
Ah.
I just, little,
Holiday.
yeah, it's a day off.
So I have to say that this entire last hour completely blew the blog I was writing out of the water. It's like I got to start from scratch now, and I hope that I can mention you, Keith, and you, Denis, as two people who are much smarter than I about some of the things you said, because those things, much of which was new to me. And I think I'd like to add that, especially Hop In and Run the World and Millicast and Cosmos Software, at least a mention of those things for people to go and do some experimenting or some research on them themselves, rather than me trying to get deep into it. Those were some fascinating things. I really appreciate that stuff.
And people should, is the public included on your Dreamforce watch party? Brent?
Anybody can check it out. Yeah.
Okay, so send me a link and we'll put it on the version of this, which we'll release next year.
Very good.
Okay, I want to thank our producer and director, Tina Chase Gillmor.
Thank you guys.
I want to thank see, this is where I usually say, and thanks to Brent Leary, who's off doing something else right now, but he's still here. So thanks, Brent Leary.
Thank you for the warm send off that I always missed until today.
For his persistence.
Yeah, we say some good stuff about you, my friend. Usually it's Steve.
It's always after you're gone, you know, then they start talking.
Yeah, right. I want it now while I'm still alive. Thank you. Thanks to Denis Pombriant.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for doing this special edition on Sunday.
Yes. Keith Teare,
Thank you.
Michael Markman,
Thank you. And thank you all.
and the Frank Radice.
Thanks for a fascinating conversation.
Thanks to everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time.
Bye-bye.
Good. We thank you too. Like, we need to give a big and hearty, you know, thank you
We
to
did
our
a
big
round
toe.
of applause.
Yeah, but you
To our
always
big
say,
toe.
you always say, and thanks to the person that really runs the show, Tina.
Yeah. That's a given, but yeah.